Welcome to today's episode on economic theories that shape our understanding of firms and contracts. Let's start with the basics. Could you explain what the incomplete contracts theory is and why it's significant?
Absolutely. The incomplete contracts theory stems from the observation that in the real world, contracts can't possibly specify every detail of a transaction or cover every future contingency. This is due to unforeseen events, the complexity of possible future states, and the prohibitive costs of writing exhaustive contracts. Pioneered by Oliver Hart, Sanford Grossman, and John Moore in the 1980s and 1990s, the theory explores how the allocation of ownership and control rights can mitigate issues arising from these incomplete contracts.
Interesting. How does the allocation of ownership and control rights help in this context?
In an incomplete contract, not all future decisions are specified. So the party that owns the assets involved in the transaction holds the residual rights of control, meaning they have the authority to make decisions in unforeseen circumstances not covered by the contract. By strategically allocating these rights, parties can influence each other's incentives to invest in relationship specific assets, thereby improving overall efficiency despite the contract's incompleteness.
Can you elaborate on the concept of relationship-specific investments and why they're important?
Sure. Relationship specific investments are investments that are more valuable within the context of a particular relationship than outside of it. For example, a supplier might invest in specialized machinery to produce components exclusively for a particular manufacturer. The problem is that after making such an investment, the supplier becomes vulnerable to the manufacturer renegotiating terms to capture more of the surplus. This is known as the holdup problem. Proper allocation of control rights can protect against this by ensuring both parties have incentives to invest optimally.
How does this theory explain the boundaries of the firm?
Great question. The theory provides insights into why certain transactions occur within firms' hierarchies, while others happen through the market. If the holdup problem is severe due to significant relationship specific investments and high potential for opportunistic behavior, vertical integration, bringing the transaction within the firm's boundaries, can be a solution. By owning the assets and thus the residual rights of control, the firm can better coordinate investments and reduce inefficiencies caused by incomplete contracts.
Moving on to Holmstrom and Milgram's work, how does their research on incentives relate to firm boundaries?
Holmstrom and Milgram focused on the multitask principal agent problem, where an agent is responsible for multiple tasks that vary in how easily their performance can be measured. They argued that when you provide strong incentives for measurable tasks, agents might neglect less measurable but important tasks. This has implications for firm boundaries because it suggests that certain activities are better managed within a firm where a broader set of incentives and controls can be applied, rather than through the market with high-powered incentives.
Can you provide an example to illustrate this?
Certainly. Consider a teacher who is incentivized solely based on students' standardized test scores. While this might improve test results, the teacher might neglect other important aspects like critical thinking or creativity, which are harder to measure. In a firm setting, if an employee has multiple responsibilities, high-powered incentives tied to easily measurable outputs might lead them to ignore crucial but less quantifiable tasks. Therefore, firms may opt to internalize such roles to apply more balanced incentive schemes.
How do these theories influence the way firms design their internal organization and incentive systems?
Both theories highlight the importance of aligning incentives with organizational goals while considering the limitations of contracts and performance measurement. Firms need to design incentive systems that encourage agents to perform all essential tasks effectively. This might involve using lower-powered incentives, combining them with monitoring, fostering a strong organizational culture, or carefully structuring ownership and control rights to ensure optimal investment and effort across all tasks.
What are the practical implications of these theories for corporate governance and policymaking?
For corporate governance, understanding the allocation of control rights and designing appropriate incentive systems are crucial for mitigating agency problems and encouraging desirable behaviors from managers and employees. For policymakers, these theories suggest that regulations should account for the limitations of contracts and the potential for opportunistic behavior, especially in industries where relationship specific investments are significant. Policies might focus on strengthening property rights, enforcing fair contracting practices, or facilitating better dispute resolution mechanisms.
How have these theories been applied in areas like public-private partnerships or international trade?
In public private partnerships, incomplete contracts theory helps determine the optimal allocation of ownership between public and private entities. For infrastructure projects requiring substantial upfront investments, assigning ownership to the party best able to manage the assets and respond to unforeseen contingencies can improve efficiency. In international trade, understanding contractual incompleteness helps explain the development of institutions that support trade by reducing transaction costs and mitigating risks associated with cross-border investments.
As a researcher new to this field, how should one approach further study in these theories to contribute to the literature?
I recommend starting with the foundational papers by Hart, Grossman, Moore, Holmstrom, and Milgram to grasp the core models and assumptions. From there, explore how these theories have been extended and applied in various contexts, like innovation, finance, and organizational design. Engaging with empirical studies that test these theories can also provide valuable insights. Finally, consider interdisciplinary approaches, incorporating perspectives from law, management, and sociology to enrich your understanding and identify novel research avenues.
That's excellent. Before we wrap up, could you summarize the key takeaways for a researcher looking to delve into contract theories?
1. Incomplete contracts theory. Recognize that real-world contracts are inherently incomplete due to unforeseen contingencies and drafting costs. The allocation of residual control rights is crucial in determining investment incentives and mitigating inefficiencies like the holdup problem. 2. Ownership and control. Understand how asset ownership affects bargaining power and incentives. Ownership structures influence parties' willingness to invest in relationship-specific assets. 3. Multitask incentive problems. Be aware of the challenges in designing incentive systems when agents perform multiple tasks with varying measurability. Overemphasis on measurable tasks can lead to neglect of important but less observable activities. 4. Firm boundaries. Explore how these theories explain why firms internalize certain activities while outsourcing others, based on the trade-offs between control, incentives, and transaction costs. 5. Applications across fields. Consider how these concepts apply to various areas such as corporate governance, public-private partnerships, international trade, and organizational design. 6. Interdisciplinary research. Approach your research with an openness to insights from related disciplines, which can shed light on complex contractual and organizational issues.
Thank you for this insightful discussion, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. Until next time, on our deep dive into economic thought.